Welcome to the second part of my shoe creation tutorial. Now this time I will be retopologizing and unwrapping the mesh. I will also go through some tips, tricks and ways of navigating Maya and the UV space. Alright, so here we are for the second part, the UV and unwrapping part, and for this one what I want to do is take the we're going to take the low poly, alright, and then the high poly as well and export that into Maya. So for the high poly, all I'm going to do is just, we need to decimate this because right now, well actually it's 2 million points. It's not, I could probably just divide it up once more, right? But for now, like I said, it's fine. So what I will do is, I'm going to export this one. Yeah, okay, so let's just rename this to shoe underscore lower, just for that. And then this one we can call this shoe underscore decimated, because we are going to decimate this. Okay, so don't save any of this, by the way. So we don't want to save any of this. So what we do want to do is go over to geometry, say delete lower. All right, so now this is all, there's no subdivisions. All right, and then we're going to go to Z plugin, decimation master, and then pre-process current. Okay, just give that a second to pre-process. This is so we can decimate this piece. Okay, and so once you pre-process, don't move or don't do anything to the geometry. You can move around like this, but don't actually sculpt, because then you're gonna have to pre-process. So after you pre-process, you can decimate it. I'll keep it at 20%, say decimate current, and as you can see, right, Shift F. If I undo that and redo that, right, this is what we get. So yeah, 300,000. That's pretty good. That'll make for a good export. And then shoe lower. Okay, so shoe decimated and shoe lower. Shoe lower will also be very low. And once again, we're going to go into Maya. So this time I'm choosing Maya, not Blender, because there's a lot of Blender tutorials. So might as well use Maya. So we're going to go on over to new. All right, and let's do custom default. So this should be what you have by default. All right. So the first thing we want to do is go on over to file. We have to actually set up Maya. So Maya takes a little bit of a second to set up. So you're going to go to File, Set Project. Okay, and then we want to go to the folder that we actually designated for that. And so in this case, that is over here. I called it Maya underscore demo. So I'm going to copy this, right? So the Maya underscore demo, wherever you want to put this. In my case, it's under my ZBrush quick tutorial folder, right, that I do. So I'm going to double click on that, get the location, go over here, right, paste that in. Okay, and then you can say set. Now it's going to say, there's nothing here. Just say create the default workspace. Okay, so if we go back there, we'll notice that we have all of this. But we're not done yet. We need to go on over to file and say set project window. And this should be under that same folder. And then we'll say accept. And now over here you can see the project demo. Okay, Maya demo, a current project. Okay, there's a few here. Make sure it's set to the actual project you're working on, right, the folder. And now we have this. And what that did was it, under that Maya demo, right, it created all of these folders. This is where everything is going to save, right? So this is where you should put all of your assets, right? If you have any images, so on and so forth. And if you save this, I'm going to press Control S. It's going to save that under scenes. So over here, under scenes, there's nothing here because we haven't saved it. But if we save that, we will call this demo, give it a proper name obviously. I'm just going to call it demo underscore 00. Okay, we can save it as ASCII. That's just easier and better reading and so on and so forth, editing. And yeah, that is about it. So we're going to say save as. And yeah, we're almost done now. So one more thing we need to do is we need to set up the scaling. So right now, I don't know what the scaling is at. So I'm going to go on over to Windows. And actually, before we do that, one more thing to set up. Settings and preferences, preferences. If we go on over here to settings, that's not the one we're looking for, files and projects, right? If we go down here, we'll notice that we have autosave, that's the one. So enable prompt before saving. I enabled this so that it'll come up and say, okay, do you want to autosave? You can say yes or no, because it's annoying when your file is a little bit large and it autosaves and you have to wait. Okay, so here, number of saves, 5, 7. And where is this going to save? In the project folder, right? So basically where you have your project set up, and then how many interval minutes, right, before saving or in between saves. So that is going to save. Here we have the scene, right? And I know this is a lot, but Now we have the scene, and then the autosave will be here under autosave. All right, we don't have any yet because it hasn't started autosaving, but yeah, that's how you set up autosaving. You can just enable or disable the whole thing by doing this, okay? And you can also set the number of files and increments, so on and so forth. That you can figure out on your own, but I would say these numbers are pretty good. You could probably bump these up a little bit more. Yeah, so under settings, I'm gonna use, let's use millimeters actually. Okay, and that's fine. We're gonna say save. Okay, because it's a shoe, so we can use millimeters or centimeters, whatever you want, really. Then we can go on over to display, grid. I'm gonna keep that on, all right? And then over here, you know, how many units do you want? So we're gonna do length and width of, that's 300 millimeters, which is too little. So let's do 1,000, which would be about a meter, which is good enough. 1, 2, 3. Okay, apply. There you go. And then grid lines every 50 units. Sure. If we do every 1, that might be a bit much. So we'll do every 50, which is 50 millimeters is 5 centimeters, right? We can actually make it 100. Apply. There you go. Okay, so every 10 centimeters, basically, you'll have a grid line. Okay, so that's set up. And close. That's this button here, by the way, in case you're wondering how to get rid of that. So there we go. And to check that, we'll hold down Shift, right click and drag to a cylinder. All right, and then the cool thing here is that you can change a bunch of things. So if we have the height at 100, okay, we can just do this and see, okay, does that actually work? So there, W, right? And we know, okay, yeah, that works out because that's 100. Okay, and that there is 100, so that works out. And if you're really paranoid, you can tap spacebar. Oh, you might have this by default, so if you just tap spacebar, this will go into the view there. So we can tap into here, and then we can go on over to create. And then measuring tools, distance tool. Okay, so from here to here, that's 99. So yeah, good enough, right? That should be about 100 millimeters. So I'm gonna undo that, tap, tap, and there we go. Yeah, so that's really all we need to set up. I'm just gonna delete this because we don't need it. So Control S, and there we go. We've got Maya set up after like 10 minutes. Okay, so that's to set up Maya. Now what we're gonna do is just take everything from here and import that into Maya so we can retopologize this and unwrap it and UV it and lay it out and so on and so forth. So yeah, let's do that next. So I hope that wasn't too confusing, but like I said, I'm just doing Maya because everyone already has, there's so many Blender tutorials, so you don't need to worry about that. But you do need to, you know, either Maya or 3ds Max. You kind of just have to. That's just how it is. Some firms don't mind, but others, they kind of they're a little bit difficult with that. So yeah, anyway, we're going to move on to importing the stuff and just working from there. Alright, so this is pretty much what we're going to have by the end of the video. Now, just as a quick reminder, I just want to show you guys a few hotkeys and just navigation in Maya. So Alt, right, left clicking and dragging. Alt, left clicking and dragging will rotate. Okay, you can zoom in and out, and then you can hold on Alt and then middle mouse click and drag to pan. That is pretty much it. You can tap spacebar to go to any one of these views and tap it again to go into that view. Okay, and then you can also do that here as well. Okay, if you want to do that. So whichever view you're using, this is also basically the same thing. And then we also have all of these menus here. So you can click and drag these menus to any side that you want, and those menus correspond with these guys over here. So the channel box, okay, the modeling toolkit. So the modeling toolkit is this one, I believe. Yeah. All right. So we've got layers, so on and so forth. So those are all up here. And one thing that's special about Maya is that it uses marking menus. So marking menus are basically if you have nothing selected and you hold down Shift, right click and drag, now you have these menus where you can create a bunch of things. So a cylinder, and then you can go over here and say what type of cylinder you want, right? You can customize that. Maya is also really cool because you can create the cylinder. Right, that'll create it here because the middle of my world is over here. That'll create it here, and you can click on this and you can actually change the radius, you can change the height, you can change subdivision levels right after you create it, which is really, really cool. So that is marking menus if you don't have anything selected. But if you do have something selected, like in this case, this dude, if you press F, you can frame it like in ZBrush. If you do have something selected, that'll give you options as well. So I'm press Control 1 to go into solo mode, which is very useful. And then we can go and let's say Shift, right click and drag. We want to do multi-cut, for example, or I'm going to press Q to get out of that. I want to go into object mode firstly. So I'm just clicking and dragging, right clicking and dragging to go into object mode. And then I can go into vertex mode by just right clicking and dragging on vertices, all right? And then for here we have, you know, again, you can go into object mode or you can go into vertex mode. And then for here you can shift, right click and drag, and now you've got different options for that. So that there is kind of how marking menus work, where, and you also notice when people use Maya, they don't just do this really slowly. They'll do stuff like this to go into vertex mode, and then they'll do stuff like that to do that, and then they'll do this to do this. So they do it very quickly, and that's one of the really cool things about marking modes. The unfortunate thing is that for beginners, it's kind of not the best, because to look at tutorials, people are busy doing this very quickly and you're like, I can't see what's happening. So that's the downside for beginners, but once you get used to it, you'll really be seeing, you know, doing that. So that's really cool. Another thing is Shift, Alt, and D will get rid of the object history, basically. So if I undo that, basically it's going to show me here what I was doing. So I was merging vertices, I was doing, you know, tweaks to the UV, so on and so forth. That's really cool. The downside here is if you go back and kind of mess with this, you could probably crash Maya. And speaking of Maya crashing, Maya crashes all the time. So you want to save all the time. And I did show you under Windows settings and preferences, you want to make sure that you're saving under saving files, projects. You want to make sure that autosave is enabled and you have a few here, right, just set up for that. So yeah, that's about it for everything that I need to explain. So you've got these menus here, the menus up here. You can also access all of these menus by just holding down spacebar, and then here you've got it here, which is really cool. So you can Maya and then top view, left view. Okay, so I'm just holding down spacebar, left clicking and dragging on the menu to select those ones. So you can go to select, which is over here, right? Forgot where it was, but you know, you'll find the stuff there. So file, edit, create, those are all here. Select, there it is. Okay, so stuff like that. So that's really useful. And one more thing I wanted to show you, I use this a lot, but I didn't actually explain how I did it in the tutorial. So if I press Control Shift Z, I go into X-ray mode, which is this thing over here. Okay, that's very useful. So we're going to set up that hotkey by going over to Windows, and that's the only one we're going to set up, Windows, and then we're going to go on over to Settings and Preferences, and then Hotkey Editor. So in this case, you can just maximize it like this. Okay. In this case, I want the application command, okay? I want to type in, I actually forgot what it was called, so I'm going to go to my hotkey itself and then just press the hotkey. So it's called View X-Ray TGL. So let's, application command, you're going to say View X-Ray TGL, right? And then over here, you're going to put in the shortcut. So mine is Control Shift Z. That's the one I've assigned to that. So whatever you want, you can assign it to that. You know, for obviously look, I'm pretty sure it'll give you an error if you assign a hotkey that's already been used, but Control Shift Z is a safe bet because I don't think it's been used. And then once you're done, you can just say save. Okay, save and close. And then for this, we've got Control Shift Z, which is very useful. And yeah, that's really about it. We're going to be using this menu custom default, and then later on we'll be using UV editing. So you know, there's a lot going on with Maya, and yeah, it looks like a program from the early 2000s, which is really annoying, but that's at first, that you get used to it. So. And yeah, that is really it for the quick intro here. Nothing too fancy, but I'll see you in the tutorial. And like I said, we'll go through things as we go there, so no need to worry about that. So now that we actually have everything set up, right, our scaling, saving, etc., let's actually export the ZBrush stuff, right? Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. So we can export this. We'll do FBX, right? And then also, oh yeah, we don't know our scaling here. So export. Here the scale is at 100, so for the export settings, make sure this is all on 0, and this as well. I have it at 100, but we'll see what it does. So Z plugin, FBX export import, which is here, right? The selected mesh, yes. Okay, all of this should be fine. Smooth normals, yeah, sure. We'll go to export. So for this one, we're gonna go over to our folder there, right? ZBrush Quick. So in my case, it's the ZBrush Quick folder, and then the Maya demo. We're going to put all of our assets in the assets folder, right? Keep ourselves organized. So shoe lower FBX, yes. And remember, we're exporting this at 100 times the size. So I don't know if that's right or wrong. A shoe shouldn't be too big. That's about, I don't know, 25, 30 centimeters. So we'll see. File, import. Okay, we're gonna go back one, go to assets, shoe lower. Okay, that's down there because Okay, so that piece is there because if you switch on the floor, you'll notice that the world is over here and the shoe's down here. Now, I didn't actually move mine. Yours should be in the world. If it isn't, it's fine. We're just going to leave it here because I don't want to start moving things around. That's going to be a little bit annoying. Right, when you import it here, let's have a look at the size here. This is the front, so I need the top. There we go. So I need to measure this. This is about 100, 200. Yeah, I mean, in terms of scaling, that's not too bad. So I'd say that's around about what it should be. We can make it a little bit bigger if we wanted to, but I think 100 is correct. Now, if yours is too big or too small, and again, to measure that, just tap spacebar, go on over to File, Edit, no, Create, Create, Measuring Tools, Distance Tools, so from here to here, that's about 225, so yeah, not too bad. It might be slightly off in terms of what you want, so we can go on over to export settings, make this like 125, I guess. Okay, so go to Z plugin, export, remember selected, okay, shoe lower, yes. Okay, we go back here, we can just delete this dude. Okay, delete. All right, I want to go to our shader here. Just go to edit, say delete unused nodes. That's just to get rid of our materials that have got imported. Right, import shoe lower. Okay, we'll go to our, I think I said yes, that was the autosave mistake. You press spacebar at the same time, but that's fine. All right, go to the top view, file, create, measuring tools, distance tools. So from here to here, yeah, it's about 30 centimeters. So I'd say that's good enough, right? I'm gonna undo that, go back here, and yeah, so we want to organize ourselves. We're going to press Control G to create a folder, right, or group, sorry. We're going to call this low, just low. Okay, and then we're going to go back here and don't save this file, remember, right, because you deleted some things. The decimated version, right, we want this visible. Okay, don't mind all this stuff, we'll sort it out later. This is just the decimated version. We won't delete anything from here because this is what we need. So we're going to go to Z plugin again, export, shoe decimated, yes. Again, we're saving it under Maya assets, right? Save, and that should take a second. There we go. Okay, and what I want to do quickly here, so if you press F to frame, right, that's the same as in ZBrush, by the way. I want to go to this, the shaders. Okay, to bring this up, just click on this. Okay, and all I want to do is, let's just open this up. We'll go to Arnold over here. We'll go all the way down to texture, shader, surface, AI standard surface. All right, that's going to create a new surface here, a new material. We're going to call this low poly underscore SDR. Oops, underscore SDR for shader. All right, that's what that is. Just so we can identify it, and then we'll just give it a color here, so like that. It really doesn't matter what color it is, okay? And then next, we're gonna click on this dude, and then right click and say assign material to selection, okay? So right click and drag, assign material to selection. Make sure it's actually selected. Right click and drag, assign material. So that's over there. Next, I want to click on this and then say, click on this button here. This will create a new layer and assign all of these objects to that layer there. This layer, we will call this low poly. Low poly. You can give it a color if you want. A yellow should be fine. Save. Okay, so we're going to save this, right? Actually save. So now if we click on V for visibility, okay, you can do that, or you can click on here and press H to hide. Okay, so that's sorted. Next, we're gonna, actually we will hide this. Well, let's just unhide it for now. File, import, decimated. There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna hide the low poly so we know it's all, it all works out. So with this one, I want to press Control C, Control V to copy and paste. Okay, with this one, I'm just gonna go, whoops, this one. So we're gonna middle mouse click and drag to bring this in here to edit it. We're gonna call this decimated underscore SDR. Okay, give it a different color, obviously. So there, that's fine. Okay, click on this, right click and drag assign material to selection. Okay, that's good enough. We're going to call Control G to group that. Okay, middle mouse button, click and drag to move that. We're just going to call this decimated for the decimated stuff. And then over here, if you lose yourself, just go back to the channel box, the outliner, all right? And that's these guys here. And you can select them like this, by the way. So yeah. I want to select this dude, right? Click on that so it creates a layer with this already inserted. If you don't do that, you can just click on this, right click on the layer and say add selected objects. That will do that. And here I just want to call this decimated. Yeah, now all we have to do is actually create the low poly. So I mean, customize this low poly so it's actually like one piece, right? So it wraps all the way around. So we will have to delete some things and move some things around, but that's the next step. So we just have to make sure that it's actually, you know, adhering to this. But if we just have a look at the low poly here like that, right click and drag to go to face, right? Like stuff like this, they actually need to be merged together. So, you know, this needs to be one piece, so on and so forth. So yeah, right, we're gonna have to combine pieces. And again, I know you're probably thinking, why don't we just do the low poly like all at once instead of bringing it in? That just depends on how you want to do it, right? So I'm just doing it this way. You don't have to do it this way. However you want to do it, it's up to you. So I'll just show you that way really quickly. So if we just get rid of the low poly and we have this one, we can click on this dude, right? And then we can go to make live object, right? So now this is live, we can make a low poly on this. So we can't actually select this anymore. Okay, we can't actually do anything to it. There's no way to select it unless you click on this, and now it's selectable. So make it a live object, okay? And then over here under the modeling toolkit, which I believe is this one here. Sorry, that's tool settings. Modeling toolkit is, actually I have no idea where, oh, it is this one, right? So this one, right? And you can just click and drag these boxes and put them wherever you want. So I think it was here. I just clicked and dragged it over here, right? So modeling toolkit, we're gonna go all the way down to quad draw, okay? We're just gonna click, 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 click to add vertices, and then shift click to create a polygon, right? And now we can just click and move this, and you'll see it'll stick on the surface. Then you can tab, click and drag, tab, click and drag, tab, click and drag, tab, middle mouse click and drag, right, to extrude edges like that, or loops, sorry. You can control shift click to do that, control click to add loops. Okay, and by the way, all of these shortcuts are down here, so just go to look at this. That's but the ones I showed you are pretty much the ones you use. So control shift click, tab, click and drag. You can also add points like that by just clicking, and then shift click to do that. If you hold down shift, and that'll kind of massage that into place, right? So this will just basically stick onto this live object, whatever the live object is, right? In this case, it's the shoe. So you can make the low poly like this, which is relatively easy because of the shoe that we're doing. And if you want to do that, that's totally fine. So what I have here is this piece, right? And to get out of there, just press Control Shift Q, Control Shift Q. So this piece here, right? So this already has these pieces here for us. So we can either use this or create our own one like you're seeing me do here. So either one works. It's really up to you on how you want to go about doing it. So yeah, right? So I want to we can maybe just use this piece here, right? This one, and then build it up from there because it's not a lot of work. So yeah, maybe we'll do that. Let's see, right? But again, it depends. It's totally up to you, right? Here, there's a little bit more control because you can control exactly how many you want. Here, you can put more or add less or minus from, right? It just depends on what you want. All right, so what I actually decided to do was just use this piece here, and then we'll kind of do everything manually. So what I'm gonna do is duplicate this piece here, right? So Shift D, all right? And let's go here to where it is, all right? So I'm gonna call this low poly, so shoe underscore just low, shoe underscore low, all right? And this one we'll just call this the template, all right? Okay, so we've got two of them visible, which we don't really need, so I'm gonna hide this one with H, okay? And then this one, all I really want is this piece here. So I'm gonna go to face, double click on this, press Control Shift I, and delete everything else, all right? Because we don't need that piece there. And what I also want is probably this piece here. So you can select things like this, all right? And if you hold on Q and then, left click and select, we've got camera-based selection. So if you switch it off, this will go all the way through, which you might not want. So hold on Q, left click and drag, go to select and say camera-based selection on. And I think you can set that over here, yeah. So under tool settings, you can say camera-based selection on or off. So I can just do this like this, all right, and then shift click and drag. If you just hold down shift, it will kind of invert things, which can be a little bit annoying, right? It's useful, but so shift, control, click and drag. And I just want these guys here. And to make this a little bit easier, we can switch to the lasso, all right, and select it that way, all right? There's a few ways to do this. So just these dudes here. Okay, so like that. Just want to make sure I don't have any stragglers like this. Okay, so I'll just deselect that with control clicking and dragging. All right, and I had the mouse-based selection on there, so I'll just deselect this piece. All right, this is the bottom of the shoe, and I realize these are the kind of similar colors here, so you can't see. That's a bit of a mistake there. So let me change that really quickly. Make this like a blue or something. Yellow is fine. Okay, yeah. So I'll just deselect that, and I want this little piece here as well. So I'll press Shift, all right, and then the greater than sign, all right. So that'll grow your selection, or the less than will shrink your selection, which is very useful. Okay, so that there, and then I'll press Control Shift I, okay, to invert, and then I'll delete that because we don't need that anymore. And this piece actually we can delete because object mode. We can delete that piece, right? Now, one thing you'll notice is that if you go on over here, you'll see a bunch of lists, like as you work on this, for example, okay, as you go. What we'll do is we'll press Shift, Alt, and D just to delete that history. Now, I'll explain that a little bit later, so it's a little bit more clear there. So, right, and what I'm going to do as well is bring back the decimated layer, right? So it'll pretty much be flush on there, okay? And what I want to do is go back to this piece and say make live object, and then on this piece I'll press Control Shift Q, and now this will be the layer that we use to retopologize, right? So basically I'm using what we had, and I'm just manually retopologizing. So firstly, what I do want to do is add some loops here. So here, for example, I definitely want to add a loop there, and then just Shift, click and drag just to smooth that out. Okay, just so it's a little bit more distributed among those areas. And then here as well, I might want to, yes, that's kind of clipping on edges there, which I don't really, seems a bit odd there. So I'm just going to move this, and I'm going to move this one here and move this one as well. Just so there's a little bit more topology here. So like that. Okay, and then like this. And I don't think I need a subdivision running all the way down here. Maybe I can actually. So I'll put one here, right? So in my case, it loops all the way around here. That's fine. And you're probably thinking that's a little bit of a waste. So what I will do is I'll do this, all right, and then create a loop here. So that way it's just, let's save, there we go. It's just cut off. Now, if you want proper loops all the way around, you can just do what I did, so undo that. So Control click, and that'll go all the way around. But I feel like that's kind of wasting. So Control Shift Z. Sorry, Shift Z to redo your steps. Okay, let's move that there, move that there. All right, and we can merge these ones maybe, yeah. And then, whoops. So this will merge automatically. If you just run them next to one another, they'll automatically merge. That's a setting which you can switch off. I think over here under Modeling Toolkit. It's here somewhere. Anyway, we'll leave that on. All right. And let's see, I just want to Control click on this one. All right, so yeah, Control click will add loops, but you can see what I'm pressing here, so that's fine. This is getting a little bit messier, so if you think, you know what, I want to keep the loops, you know, the way they should be, this is the bottom of the shoe though, so no one's really going to see this, right? They're triangles, not the biggest deal. You might think they are, and we can, you know, do that, for example, and see if that helps. And yeah, okay, sure enough. So yeah, I think we're good to go on that piece. I'm just gonna move these pieces. Remember, this is the front of the shoe here, so people will see you know, the kind of nodes is the faceted faces here. So depending on, you know, how much you want or don't want. Okay. Here I think we'll be fine. So that's fine there. Okay, let's just, you know, we'll go with it as we, maybe one more here, right? That one's kind of doing its own thing. So I'm going to move this here. All right. And then, yeah, we'll put one here maybe. So like that. There's a loop. Okay. Again, it might look a little bit untidy, and that's fine. So if this happens where you can't like select the edge there, just press Q to get out of that. All right. And then vertex mode. All right. And then you can go into X-ray mode, right? Select that, press W, and then slide this out. And that should slide on there. And then we go Control-Shift-Q, and then that should be on there like that, all right? So that's just getting out of the modeling mode, all right? And then we can manually move that as you would anything else, all right? Again, this is a bit messy. You can come back, you can Control-click, and then we can kind of redo this here if we need to, all right? So like that, for example, maybe we combine those two, okay, and then come back here. Again, we don't need to do this because this is it's literally the bottom of the shoe, so no one's gonna see it, all right? You don't have to go too crazy. So something like this, actually let me eliminate that one. Okay, we'll put that there, and maybe there, and then there we go. Now we've got 4 quads, right? So, you know, there's ways to figure this thing out. There's no need to, but again, it depends on what you want and how much time you're willing to put into it. And I put in too much time here, so we'll leave that alone. And we can, you know, collapse these edges here, for example. So like, I probably, you know, push these ones here, right? Because there's no need to have this many edges. Whoops, this many edges. So I'll just see if that will work. There we go. So to do that, I held down Control-Shift and then click, middle mouse click and drag. Okay, there we go. And then just Shift-click to smooth. And we'll get to optimizing. I'm just kind of showing you this, that you can do this if you wanted to. See, that's good enough for that. So we basically have the base of the shoe done. So I'm just going to move these into place here. And what people also like to do under the modeling toolkit over here under quad draw options, the live constraint options, all right? The surface offset, I have this at 0.035, which means that the distance from this thingy here, right, to this live object, right? Remember this piece here, we made it a live object. So the shoe here, object mode. This shoe here, we made it a live object, right? This piece from here to there, that's what it's doing. It's showing you the distance. So if I bump that up, let me just change it to something ridiculous like 0.08. Okay, yeah, there we go. Right, so we see that there. Let me do it here. So you see there's a little bit of distance from here to there. Now that might be what you want in some cases, and in some cases it might not be. So it just depends on kind of what you're doing and where you're going. So 0.35, actually 0.4 might be better. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at 0.4. And usually you'll bump this number up for bigger pieces, right? And then as you go into detailing, so let's say eyes, for example, like eyelids, you'll put this down to like 0.1 or something. And yes, you want a little bit of an offset. You don't want it exactly, you know, on the surface, because you can see here. So I might actually have to put a loop here, which I will do, but not now, okay? And speaking of this piece, you can see here under the editor, right? Have a look at all of this. Is literally our history for this object. Now Maya stores all of this, and it's really cool because you can go back and you can see what you've been doing, you know, what you haven't been doing. But it also takes up a little bit of space, right? So as you're going, you'll notice the program will slow down. Okay, go into object mode here. Okay, so we want to get rid of that by pressing Shift, Alt, and D. That's the shortcut to get rid of that. And you want to do that with all your objects very often, right? And again, I don't know why I select the worst colors for these things. Let's select a different color here. Yeah, like a purple something. That's fine. Yeah, okay. Again, the hypershade is here, this window. Okay. So I'm just changing the color there and then back to it. So Control Shift Q, and now we're going to move this one up here. So let's see if we can do it all at once. We might not be able to, but let's see. So I'm going to hold on Control Shift and then, sorry, Tab, and then middle mouse button, click and drag up. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. So you see here just a little bit. So to counteract that, what you can do is you can just do Shift, click and drag up. Okay, and then you go to another area, Shift, click and drag up. Extrude that one, and then you do the same thing in between that. So Shift, middle mouse button, click and drag up, and so now you're doing like one section at a time. All right, that's pretty useful. So here what I'll do is I want another division here, so I'm going to control clicking, but I just want to get this in here quickly, just as a sort of, just so we know where it is, right? And here you can see it's already clipping edges there. So what I'll do is I'll press Q, all right, go into vertex mode, and I have a shortcut for this mode here, right, X-ray mode, and I can just select those two, press W, okay, and then I'll just slide this out so it hits there again, and then Control Shift Q again to go back into that so we can actually grab these edges. So yeah, as you can see, so what I want to do here, I want to line these up with these edges here. So I'll do something like that, okay? That's so this lines up with that, and it might look a little bit awkward here, but it's not too bad. So Control Shift Q again, okay, press W, and I'm just going to slide this out. Now by default, if you have life constraints on, slide will be on by default, so it's just going to slide on the surface as best as it can, okay? So in case you're wondering why it's sliding, that's why, because you've got life constraints on. So here we have a decision to make. Do we want to add another loop here, you know, coming all the way around to support this, or do we want to leave it? For now, I'll leave it. You just want to keep things simple in the beginning, right? So like, yeah, I know I need a loop for this piece, right? But I'm going to leave it for now. I'm just going to leave it just so we have the shape. We get the shape. And then we're just going to manually do all of this. All right, so just like that. So now I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through these pieces here. So all I'm going to do, the exact same thing. I'm just going to go all the way around and do the same thing. But I just won't narrate that, right? Because you've already seen me, you have an idea of what to do now, right? So yeah, let's just fast forward through that, and you won't have to worry about me going on about the same things over and over again, okay? And you want to press Control Shift Q, right click and drag to object mode, and just every now and then Alt Shift and D to clear this area here. In order to save, there we go. I'm going to save manually, by the way, by pressing Control S. Okay, and yeah, let's get to it. So Control Shift Q, and we'll just do this manually. All right, so we've done this loop here, and really that's about it, right? That's kind of what retopology is. You're just gonna have to like follow, you know, like color between the lines basically. So that's kind of what this is. You also notice I've you know, pushed these areas here so that it links up with some of these pieces here, for example, right? And here we do that together. Now, if you have this on this side, on the original shoe, it has it on both sides. So don't forget to do that over here. But yeah, we're pretty much done with this. Right, when you see stuff like this, right, it means that, okay, we're gonna have to add a loop here. So I did say I want to add a loop. So if you want to add it directly in the middle, you can just hold down Control and middle mouse click, and that will pretty much be in the middle, all right? And that is very useful, right? Or you can just hover and then click wherever you need it to be, all right? So in this case, we don't need 2 loops. I think, you know, that's too much. So I'm gonna leave it at 1. So hover and then middle mouse click to have that in the middle. And yeah, I think that is good enough for what we need. You can see clipping these edges here like that. So sometimes it doesn't really do a great job with pushing this to where it should be. So just go ahead and double check that. So here it's all fine. I don't think that's fine. Yep, that's all fine, all fine. I think here as well. So just hover over, oh yeah, actually it's a bit of a problem. Just hover over it and see what happens, right? So if you can't grab the edges here, it means it's clipping. So all throughout here, really, it's pretty much doing that, which is kind of annoying. But to sort that out, we just press Control-Shift-Q, right? Go into X-ray mode, which is this one here. Okay, and then autosave, yes, always, when I'm recording. Okay, so these edges here, I can actually see it clipping there. So I'm gonna press Control-Shift-Z. That's my shortcut for that. And I'm just gonna slide this in here, and there we go. Okay, Control-Shift-Q, and I can just smooth this back out again. Okay, and here again it's clipping, so I'm gonna go Control-Shift-Q. Okay, go into X-ray mode, and I'll just take these edges here, all right, and just slide them out here, see if I can. Okay, yep, that's fine. And maybe these edges here, right, yeah. Okay, again, we could have manually taken the pieces from our low poly and tried to, you know, fix that in here. But by the time you do all the sliding and moving and so on and so forth, you might as well just do it manually. So it kind of depends. You can do it, you know, manually like I'm doing. You can do it by just copying and pasting like we did with this piece. But like you saw, we had to still come in, you know, and kind of chop and change a few things. So yeah. Okay, but I think that is good enough. So here, I think I'm gonna need to put a lip in because this distance here is quite a bit. So I can't do, like I can't do this. I mean, you could do this and it could still work. I'm not gonna say it's not gonna work. It definitely will, but depending on like, if this is your main character shoes, you're probably gonna wanna, you know, add more loops and so on and so forth, right? And even here, I'm contemplating whether I should add one, and I think I will actually, so let's do that. I'll do that later. But what I do want to do is just make sure everything is lined up here. Yeah, that's fine. And I just want to add a loop here. So what I'll do is I can do that, right? And then just manually pull these, right? Or what I could do is just undo that. Is tab, right, middle mouse button, click and drag up. Okay, and just make sure that that kind of works. It's going to clip some edges here. That's fine. That's just how it is. Right, and then work that out. And then what I can do is hold on Control and then click and then, right, manually do that. So either way works, and then we just have to manually move these. So either way works, right? Depends on what you want. So I'm going to leave it like this since I already did this. And I'm just going to manually move this, right? And again, I'll fast forward because you don't need to see me doing that. And then I'm just going to come back in, right, Control, click, and then move this into place. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do next. So nothing too crazy again, right? Just following a sort of procedure, right? And that's really all it is. And again, you know, if it's clipping edges like this, which it will, right? It just will, that might annoy you. So I'll just go to Control-Shift-Q, go to maybe face, for example. Okay, and then click, and then Shift, double click. That'll get the loop from here to here. Then I can just delete it, right? And then do it manually. So whatever you want to do, you know, up to you. So yeah, I'm just going to fast forward through this and we'll just keep going as we go. And I'll voice anything that needs to be, but for the most part, I think you guys get the point by now, right? And just as another quick reminder here, if you're, you know, Alt and then clicking and dragging and you see that it doesn't really rotate where you want it to, maybe it's like, it feels like the pivot is here or something, you'll just get out of there with Control-Shift-Q, all right, go into object mode, click on whatever you want to rotate around, and then just press F to frame that. Okay, that will just make things a little bit easier. And don't forget about your Alt-Shift-D to clear the history over here. All right, so yeah, Alt-Shift-D is just something you're gonna have to get used to with Maya. No program really has that, so it's a Maya exclusive pretty much. But yeah, I mean, as you'll notice your program slowing down, you're like, why is it slowing down all of a sudden? And then you'll notice this building up, so it'll become second nature. So yeah, again, let's get back to the retopology, and then I'll fast forward through that, and then get back to you guys with anything that I need to. Okay. Okay, so we're pretty much done with the like the base of the shoe and the sides here. So you'll notice, we have sort of these wobbly lines here, and really all you have to do is just smooth it out by shift and clicking and dragging, all right? And this will smooth this out, not shift it. It will smooth it and shift it, right, into place basically. So it'll try and even out what you're doing between the borders, right? So as long as you don't hit the borders, you're pretty much good to go. So yeah, and I just left this on purpose so we could do it together so you kind of see. So there we go, right? It pretty much evens everything out. And this is kind of what you want, an even sort of, they don't have to be the exact same shape, right? So like here you can see it's more rectangular horizontally, and here it's more rectangular vertically, right? So, but as you can see, it has a nice flow to it, right? It's not some weird jaggedy, like here it's a bit off, but that's because we're still busy with that side, right? But other than that, it looks like it belongs, right? It's not just some weird thing there. So here we're trying to keep this with this line here. Again, we can decide, do we want to put another loop there, or do we want to leave that? Okay. And then also here, I feel like there's too many polygons here now. So what I will do is I'll actually merge these together, right? And then move them and then smooth that there, for example. So one thing, people don't like triangles. That's more for animation, but even if you are animating, especially like a finger or something, triangles are fine. It just depends what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what your end goal is, right? So triangles, totally fine. It just depends what you want, what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. So people tell you not to put triangles, ask them why, and if they can't give you a good explanation, then it just means that they don't know what they're talking about in terms of, right, what they're trying to do. So good topology is any topology that works for its intended purpose or purposes, right? So that's the, if it works with triangles and, you can animate it, you can render it, so on and so forth, then people really can't argue with you on adding triangles, okay? So I'm gonna also do these edges here because I feel like, again, we have too much topology here. We don't need that much. Again, it's up to you. Maybe you don't care about polygon count. In our case, we don't, because we don't have a director or a budget, right? We're not putting this in an engine or anything. And even if we are, we're not actually, it's not an actual game we're making, so it doesn't really matter. There's no budget for us. We can kind of do whatever we want, right? We could have double this if we wanted to. No one really care. I could probably merge more here, but I'll just leave that for the sake of time, right? And yeah, that's fine. So again, triangles are here, not a big deal. It really isn't. You can come back in and try and square everything up, but even if we animate this, remember, this is going to be the bottom of the shoe. No one's looking at that, right? This is literally what you're going to see. And maybe somebody will have a zoomed in shot like this of somebody walking, but again, you're never going to see these triangles, and you can still animate this. It's not a big deal. So there's no need to freak out there. So I'm going to say between demo 1 and demo 00. Okay, and if I do save this again, have a look at our autosaves here. Right, there's quite a few already, so we've got quite a few backups there. And oh yeah, I wanted to do this together here. So I'm just gonna move this because that piece kind of curves like that. Right, that's pretty good. So we'll leave that there. So here, we could just do this, right? If we wanted to, and then close that like that. And that would still bake, it would still look fine. So that's up to you. Do you wanna do that? Do you wanna, go in and add more loops to this? So I think we can, right? Again, up to you, whatever you want to do. This will still bake just fine. It's not a big deal. So I'll put this here maybe, and then we'll have like a loop coming this way, I think. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to Control Shift, right click and drag to multi-cut tool, okay? So again, in this mode, Control Shift, right click and drag to multi-cut tool. Okay, so I'm going to cut here, cut all the way there, cut there. I'm gonna press enter. Right now, obviously we have too many polygons here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want 5 points. So I'm gonna cut here, press enter. Okay, and then cut here, and press enter. Okay, so that will deal with that piece. I'm gonna go to, if I just drag these down here, so these should be fine there, and this will be, yeah, basically there. So it's clipping, but that's fine. We're going to add another loop there just to support that. All right. Again, there's no need to do this because, like I said, the baking, it will bake, so fine. So what I'll do here is I'll just add another cut here so it supports that. So again, Control Shift, click and drag up. So from there to there, not from there to there, from there to there. to here, to there, enter, okay? And then we actually need to connect these, so from there to there, for example, and then from here to here. Again, this is unnecessary, but I'm just showing you that you can do that, right? And we go back to quad draw tool. Okay, so here it's all clipping. We're gonna have to manually move that. So what I will do, actually, I'll just probably delete these edges now that I think about it, because it's kind of in my way. I know, like, why'd we do that? Because I wasn't paying attention, that's why. So we'll just do that and that. So you can do it either way, right? I'm just doing it this way because it's a little bit, so it doesn't, just so we can manually move these things into place, right? But again, if you don't want to follow along with this because it's too much work, no problem, I totally get it. Okay, we'll extrude that one out, extrude this one. So the whole idea is just so that I get that silhouette shape there, right? That's literally the only reason as to why I'm doing this. But do we need to do it? No. It'll still work if we, you know, pulled it all together there, like I said. So yeah, we can merge these. Whoops, we can merge these pieces together like that, okay, and have that be one piece, you know, or we could keep it a quad like this. So again, totally up to you, but I think I'll merge them, make it a triangle there, why not? Yeah, it's kind of struggling because it's trying to like hit which surface, right? So it depends. You can just manually move that, get out of live constraints, and then just manually do that, because sometimes it can get a little bit confused as to what you're trying to do. Okay, so we have that piece, and then to close these, you can just hold on Shift and click, and that'll close any loop that you have. So like this, Shift click, or like that. It's trying to it's doing its own thing there, but yeah. And if you do click, you will get these vertices. If you want to delete them, just hold on Control and Shift and delete them, right? Or just undo it. So either way, you should be fine. And I did say we wanted a loop here, so let's do that now together. But yeah, I think everything I needed to show you is pretty much right, like how to solve these issues here. Again, we could put another loop here just to support this edge, right, because it's doing, right, there's a little bit of a bump there, but I think we'll be fine. Okay, that's good enough. And again, I want that loop here, so I'm going to Control click, maybe not too close to the edges there, yeah, and then I will have to manually move these into place, unfortunately, right? So like that. So yeah, again, I'll fast forward through all of this, and if you have edges like this that are too close, they might start clipping or start merging automatically. So you can either just delete it and try again, or I'd see that it's trying to find whichever one, but yeah. So that's good enough. Again, that's to get the silhouette, right? The step down here. The step is quite far, so that's why I wanted to put this here. You know, again, you don't have to. If you bake it at a proper setting, you could catch all those details. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when we get to the baking section, you'll see what I'm referring to. Okay. Alright, so we are pretty much almost done here. Just a few more things I want to adjust. So with this piece, I might just copy and paste the low poly here again, right, just to see what we get. But for this one, what I'm going to do is I do want a few pieces here. So I'm going to push this kind of right up against there, and it'll, you know, try and catch there, right? So we'll do that. And then for this piece, I'll have probably 3. So 1, so that there, 1, 2, and then the third one will come down here, right, like this. So just 3 pieces there. I think that's good enough. Again, if we need any, we can always hit the loop there And yeah, that should be good enough. So I'm just gonna again fast forward through this. There's no need for you to see me doing all of that, right? Here as well, I'll probably pull this. So for this shoe, because it's just a singular piece, I'll pull this all the way down here. But really, if you're putting this on a character and you're not really going to see any of this, you can just leave it here where it is. So like here, right? You can pull it all the way to here and pretty much leave it, right? There's no need to retopologize beyond that. Basically, if you don't see it, if you're never going to see it, you don't need to have topology to represent it because it's kind of a waste, right? Just for the sake of demonstration. But again, you wouldn't actually do this for shoes in a game. You know, again, depending, maybe it's a game about shoes, collecting shoes or something, then you probably would, you know, pull this all the way down and retopologize the whole thing. But for the most part, if you're never going to see it, there's really no need to, you know, do that. Alright, so we are pretty much done here. Now again, you know, this area, you really wouldn't retopologize this. You probably wouldn't put any of this stuff here, right? So from here, right, or about here, you wouldn't, you know, put any of this stuff here. So again, I'm just doing it for the sake of showing you guys. But again, depending on the project, you know, maybe if it's a fashion game or something, you probably would like do this all the way. But again, I'm just letting you know. So just so you're kind of aware, but you probably, like I said, you wouldn't do that. So again, I am just doing it just to kind of show you, but for the most part, you probably just wouldn't for the most part, right? But I think, yeah, that's good enough. Maybe I'll just finish off here a little bit, right, for the sake of completion. So just a few decisions here, right? So like putting these triangles, I wouldn't really put the triangles on the edges here. So like that, you know, the triangle will be on the edge. So maybe just pull it out one more. So like this, like I have here, right? Or even one more so over here. And then also here, I split this. Oh, I didn't complete this one here, right? So I'll show you how to complete those in a second. Triangle there is fine, like I said, we're not animating. But this split, you see, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. You could put it here in the middle, the actual middle, right? Putting it here doesn't really make any sense, so I'd put it here, right? And the reason as to why I put that there was just to give us a little bit more resolution here, right? So yeah, we are pretty much done. Just kind of have a look for any, like, you know, stragglers. So maybe you've got like a piece missing here, for example, right? You want to fill that in. Okay, so we press Ctrl-Shift-Q, and then what we can do is go into object mode, Alt-Shift-D. I haven't been doing that the whole time, but that's okay. Okay, so we can press Control 1 to go into solo mode here, and we can just have a look at this model just to see if there's any holes here. Again, this hole is on purpose, that's fine. So one thing we do want to do is go into vertex mode. Alright, so Control Shift A to select all of them, and then Shift, right click and drag, merge vertices, and then merge vertices. We want 0.01, and I have this here, I'll show you how to bring that. I'm going to apply. So basically just to merge any like stragglers, but that's not there, so we're fine on that one. So to bring this window up, right, you go to Windows, Display, Heads Up Display, and then the poly count, right, this one here. So yeah, that's how you get these windows up, just so you can kind of see details of your mesh. Another thing to do for cleanup would be really useful here. You go on over to Mesh, and all the way down to Cleanup, all right. And so we want to look for a few things. So faces with more than 4 sides, all right. So we go to Apply, and we don't have any here, right? But just to kind of show you what will happen if we do have that, I'm just going to get out of that mode, all right? And let's go to Vertex. And let's just cut vertex. All right, let's just cut this here, multi-cut. Right, so we have like a few random vertices. So we press enter, right? Get out of that mode there, object mode. All right. So now if we go to cleanup, right, and say apply, it's going to show you, oh, you know, here's something here, and it'll tell you faces have been selected, and that's what's going on there. So I'm just going to undo that. All right. If we go back to object mode and do apply, it'll deselect the object, and then you know that, okay, right, you don't have any areas that you need to worry about. So more than 4 sides, definitely something you don't want. So you want to clear that. You can look at non-manifold geometry as well. Apply that just to see if we have that. I usually do that manually, so that's fine. And then also merging the vertices, like I just showed you. Okay, another thing I like to do is just select it, hold down Shift, click and drag to soften and harden, and then soften the edges. Just to do this. And if you see like weird stuff like this happening, what you can do is click on this, go on over to Mesh Display, unlock the normals, right, that will set that, and then go on over to Soften Harden Edges, soften the edges, then go back and go to Mesh Display and lock the normals, right, and that'll give you a proper display here. You know, if we have everything soft, that's fine. All right, there's really no need, because once we bake this, it'll harden the edges if it needs to. And yeah, so we're pretty much done with the retopology. Now we actually need to unwrap this. Okay, that's the next step. So let's get to it. What I do want to do is, over here we've got a different, you know, a bunch of views that we can, right? You've got modeling, you've got sculpting, you've got rigging, animation. We're going to go to UV editing, and by default you'll see this come up. It's a little bit scary, but I'll explain that in a second. So this is the UV mode, right? And this is just a 3D view. So whenever you're unwrapping things, what you want to do pretty much straight away is go to UV shells, right? Go to face, right? Double click it on this side to select all the faces, and then Shift, right click and drag mapping and planar mapping. And that will, and if you don't see anything here, by the way, planar mapping will do this and give you a view of that. So that's useful. So I'm just going to move that. Middle mouse click and drag will just move the whole thing depending on how you've selected it. Okay, so these white lines show the seams. In this case, that there is a seam because it's not connected to anything. All right. So what we want to do is actually cut these edges here depending on kind of what we want and how we want to go about doing that. So let's go on over to edge. So right click and drag edge, and I just want to double click on this, and this here will definitely be a seam. Well, not definitely, but I think it's good. It's a good idea to have it. So Shift, right click and drag, I'm going to go to cut. Okay, that'll be a separate piece. And here we have to decide, okay, are we doing it over here as well? And I think I probably will. So I'm going to double click on this one. And this is why retopology is great, because you can, you know, and this is why you don't want triangles on the edges, because this loop will get cut off if there's triangles there. So I'm going to do the same thing here, cut. Okay, if I double click here and press G, that'll just redo the last step. So G is to redo the last step. And you can also go on over to edit, recent commands list, and this will give you all the commands that you just did, which is very useful, by the way, but I'm not really going to worry too much about that one. So I cut that there, and so we have this piece here, which will be its own piece, right? And here we have to decide, okay, how are we going to cut this here? Because this is wrapping all the way around, which means it's basically a loop or tube kind of. So we need to decide how are we kind of dealing with this. So I think cutting it here is fine. So just make sure we cut from here. Sorry, that one, that one, that one. Cut. Okay. And this is going to be one long piece. So I'll cut it on this side here as well. So like this, 1, 2, 3, and cut. Okay. And here as well. So I think this loop here. Yep, that one. I'm going to cut this here. So that's good. This one here, it's going to be on the inside, so I'll just cut it here as well. Cut. And just to show you what that's actually doing, if I go on over here to UV shell and click on this, click on that, right? This will select this piece. It's not going to select everything because we actually separate the pieces by cutting them. So this is all one piece, right? If I cut it, like let's say from, let me show you quickly. Like from here to, let me just go from here to here, right? And then shift click and shift double click. If I cut that, for example, and I go to UV shell and I select this one, that there is going to basically say, oh, that there is a shell. All right, so because I cut from there to there. So that's what that's doing. It's basically separating this digit. It's not literally cutting it, it's just digitally doing that. So we can kind of understand where the seams are for unwrapping. So what I'm going to do is go to UV shell again, click on that one, and I'm going to go to shift, right click, unfold, and unfold. I'm going to press W. If I click on this and right click and drag, that will do that. And if I do this and, sorry, middle mouse click and drag, that'll kind of help us move just a little bit easier there. So I'm going to do that piece, and here's this piece here. Shift click, unfold and unfold, right? So that's why I separated those, because this is very long, and you'll see what I mean in a second. And just a quick little heads up here, in Maya, if you shift click and drag, right, you can do this, you can do it really slowly, or you can do it really quickly like that, and that there will basically do the same. So it's basically the shortcut for doing this. So 1, 2, right, so you just do this very quickly. You'll see people do that all the time with Maya, but because you guys don't know what the menus are doing, I can't really do that. It'll be a little too quick for you. So I'm going to do this piece, right, unfold, there we go, right, how quick was that? That's why I cut this piece here, so just to give it a little bit of stretching. This piece isn't important, so we won't worry too much about that. And so here we're going to have to cut as well. So let's see what we have here. I think I'm going to cut this piece here, so the edge. So from here, I'm going to press Q to get out of that. Shift click, shift double click. Okay, and shift click, and then I'm going to go to cut. So that piece is now separated. Yeah. And let's see, where else do we need to cut? So I think maybe from here. There's also a little bit of a figuring out, right, what we need to do. Or maybe I'll just cut from here to here. Kind of depends on what you want, but I think, yeah, maybe there. So I'm going to cut from here, here, here. Shift double click, okay, shift click. Coming all the way around, shift double click. Nope, not like that. Undo. So from there to here, shift double click, there we go. Okay, and I'm going on the outside, yes, just want to be consistent. So here, here, shift double click, shift click, and here as well, and then we will cut. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so we're going to go to UV shell, click on this one, and then just unfold and unfold. W just to move that. Don't worry about the placement, and this is on the inside there, so I'll just unfold that. And this piece here, so we do need to cut this because it's running all the way around. So here I'm thinking maybe we do this separately as well. So I'm going to go to the edge. So this piece here is actually separated, so I'm going to shift double click on there, and from there to there. Yeah, so this piece here can probably be separate. Actually, you know what? I'm going to undo that. Press Ctrl 1 to see where that is. Oh, okay. Yeah, so from here to here, this here can be cut as well. Okay, there we go. So UV shell, that piece there will be its own piece. So I'm going to say unfold and unfold, right? And this piece here is one. So I'm going to press Ctrl 1 so I can see where these, where I can put these cuts. This one seems kind of random here, so I'm going to put a cut over here. So from here, from here Okay, cut that one, and we need a cut on this side as well, so I'll just put it here as well, just to be consistent. Cut. Okay. There we go. We can go back to UV shell and we can object move that one. Okay, UV shell. We can unfold and unfold. There we go. So now everything has been unfolded. This piece seems a bit awkward. Oh, that's fine. That's there. Okay. So yeah, now everything is unfolded. So I'm gonna do this and then say, so select all of them, right click, shift, right click and drag, layout UVs. This is just a really quick way to do this. I'm gonna go to apply really quickly. I'll explain this in a second, don't worry about it. Just for now, just hit apply. Don't worry too much about that. It's just gonna lay everything out here, just so we can kind of see what we're working with. And what we want to do is actually check all of these pieces. Yeah, so I'm gonna press Control-1 to go into solo mode. Let's save. And I'm gonna press this thing over here. This is gonna give us a little bit of a guide to see like stretching and stuff. So here you can see actual stretching because the squares aren't really square, right? They're a little bit jagged there. We don't care about that end because we're not gonna see that really, right? But we do care about these pieces. Now the square is a little bit small or big. So I want it to be a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna go to face, select all of these. I'm gonna press R to scale. I'm just gonna scale this up by quite a bit. So now we can see, yeah, there's a good number of squares there. We can see again the wobbliness here, that's fine. But really everywhere else, right, looks pretty good. So if we had something wrong, so let's say this one, if I go and play now map that, you'll notice that it looks good here, and then all of a sudden, you know, look, that looks a bit wonky. So if you see stuff like this, it just means you haven't unwrapped it properly. So that's what this check is for, right? Just to kind of have a look at, okay, are we, you know, unwrapping these things properly? Does it look good? So on and so forth. So yeah, that all looks pretty good. I'm gonna undo this just so it, right? So now you'll notice that things are kind of, you know, they're a little all over the place here. So we want to kind of sort these out so that they're a little bit better in terms of how we lay it out. So one, because we're never really going to see these guys here, so like that and this piece, right? So basically the inside pieces. Again, you wouldn't normally have these. In fact, these would be, you wouldn't have these. They'd just be deleted like that. This is what you would have for your shoe, right? If it was, let me get rid of that so you can see, right? This is what you would have because the character's foot would be in here and you'd never see this, right? But again, I'm just, for the sake of this tutorial, right? So what we will do is we will scale these down because again, you're never going to see that. So we just want to move that out of the way there and just deal with these pieces here, the pieces that actually matter basically. So this here is your UV space. I hadn't explained this, your UV space. You want to use as much of this as you possibly can without overlapping the edges. And if we do this, right, and we go to layout and layout UV, right, apply that. You notice that these pieces got just a little bit bigger here, right? If you look at that, you're just a little bit more, right? And we want to optimize this to take up as much space as it possibly can without it having to overlap these edges here, right? So 1 and 1, and without having to overlap each other like that. We don't want that to happen, okay? That's a big no-no. So we don't want it to overlap like that on those edges, and we don't want them to overlap each other like that. But we also want to take up as much space as possible. And you'll notice that this kind of sucks, right? So what we can do is split these up even more, right? And then also we can flatten these out a little bit more so that they're laid out a little bit better, right? So right now they're okay, right? But what you would want is in a production environment, you would actually take these, straighten them out a little bit, right? And we will straighten out in a second. And then so something like this, right? Like that, and then you'd lay them out like this, lay that one out like that. Again, you'd flatten them out just a little bit more, straighten them out just a little bit more. All right, so something like that. Whoops. So like that. All right, and then you can move these and make these ones maybe just a little bit bigger, right? So on and so forth. Again, you can manually do this, right? Or you can let the computer do it for you. But again, we will split these maybe a little bit more, and then also move them manually just to kind of see how much we can squeeze out of this. So again, texture space, very important. The more texture space you allocate to something, all right, this is also the bottom of the shoe, so I probably wouldn't allocate too much texture space to this one. So I'd probably pull that down and move that here. Actually, I think I'll leave because we might do a render of the bottom here, so I will leave that. But basically, yeah, you want to squeeze as much out of this texture space as humanly possible, right? Without, again, overlapping each other or the edges, right? And sometimes you might say, why can't we just put this over here? And this. You can, those are called UDIMs, where you use multiple of these blocks to really push the texture, but in our case, we don't need that because it's a shoe, right? And you can just make this a 4K block or something of that sort. So yeah, that is kind of the gist for laying stuff out for UV and unwrapping. So, and again, the reason as to why we're actually laying these out is so that we can texture this later on. So we have a better way of texturing. So if we want to put stitches on here, right, we can come over here and actually, you know, draw on this, or we could draw on here because substance you can texture in 3D. So the whole idea behind actually doing all of this is that you can texture it, and there's a way to, you know, actually spot these things and translate it from a 2D flat piece into a 3D, right? And you'll see what I mean when we get into texturing. But for now, just know that this is one of the steps that has to be done, and just for texturing and baking and so on and so forth. Alright, so getting back to this, another thing I didn't show you guys was if you select this and you press 7, yeah, so in the UV view, right, over here, if you press 7, you can actually see the stretching and the squashing here. So that'll be represented with different colors, right? So in this case, if we zoom in here, you can see it over here. And if I go to vertices, right, and select like this, for example, and then move this, right, you can see here that's really squashed, and then stretching would be blue, right? So if I move this like that, so stretching is blue and then squishing is red, or squashing, right? So if you see like crazy red somewhere here, again, we don't care too much about it because we're never really going to see that. All right, so you will notice, right, there's a little bit of a difference there. So again, if you press 7 in the UV view, all right, you'll notice that. So what I figured I can maybe just press 7 again to get out of that. And there are different modes here, by the way, so you press 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. But you can see it over here what you're doing, and it'll tell you what you're pressing to do whatever it is. So 5 is probably the one you want just to get that shaded view. So what I also wanted to do here was actually just go into Edge and maybe just split these here, because it does look a little bit weird. So I'm just going to go here and cut that piece, all right, and then this one, and Shift double click here and cut that piece as well, right, just so that they're separated, right? And then for these ones, I will just unfold, and there we go. So that just looks a little bit better, and we can lay it out better. Not that it matters too much, but yeah, especially when we have corners like this, that's pretty much like more than 60 degrees around about. So you usually want a seam on edges that are very, very cut like that. You might say, okay, what about here? This is pretty soft, so we won't worry too much about that. But yeah, that would be an argument for putting a seam if you wanted to, right? And like even here, right, which we did put. So if it's a very hard edge, especially on hard surface stuff, you pretty much always want the seam. But in our case, we can kind of, you know, even here, for example, right, we could maybe put one here, but that's arguable, right? Okay, so now we just want to try and sort out these UVs in a way that suggests you know, just organize it better, right? So just organize it a little bit more, and that way we can just lay these out a little bit better as well. So this, for example, I know that this can be pushed up quite a bit. So the reason as to why it's not going bigger is because the way we lay these out is a little bit uncomfortable. So we have to try and sort that out. So we want to straighten out the UVs as well. So this piece here, for example, it is quite a bit, and I want to see if I can rotate this. Right, so this can be stretched out a little bit, so let's see if we can do that. And I want to see if we can maybe straighten this. So I think that's on top here, maybe? Yeah, on top here. So I'm going to go to UV. Okay, I'm going to click and then Shift double click. There we go. And then Shift double click again. Right, so that worked. And so we're going to go to straighten UVs, and sometimes it doesn't really work, so let's do it here, see if that works. All right, and let's see, straighten shell. There we go, that's better. Okay, so I'm going to move this. I'm going to double click on this to get the whole thing. Okay, just move this down. Now you can see it's just a little bit more organized in terms of how we do that. Now, if we go back to 7, there will be a little bit of stretching. Okay, so straightening the shell is like this, and you're probably thinking, why'd you straighten the shell? if we wanted to put stitching along this area here, which is very likely, right, along this area here, because we can do it in 3D right now, it's fine, so we don't have to worry too much about straightening everything. But back in the day, you would have to worry about that, okay? What you would do is, because this is straight, we can now come here and actually paint a straight line, and that will paint straight along here. So it just kind of aids us when we're texturing, really. That's kind of it. And also when we're laying things out here, because now we can put this, I can go to UV shell, click on this, move this, and that'll be, you know, that'll look pretty good there, right? So that's not too bad. And one way to sort out the stretching here would be to go into vertex, okay, select all of these, and then shift, click and drag to select the opposites, right, of that piece there. And what we could do is say unfold, unfold along U, unfold, unfold along V, just to kind of relax that a little bit more. Okay, and yeah, that's just one way of doing that. Okay, so again, unfold along U, which would be this direction, and then V, which would be sort of layout. Unfold along V, right, along that direction, just to kind of help us out. And now if we press 7, still a little bit of stretching. There's no way you can avoid that because we straightened this piece out here. So you can kind of manually go in and try and do something. But again, you know, it's up to you for what you want to do. Here's a piece that we definitely want to straighten. Okay, so this one is the back piece over here. Okay, so we can definitely keep this piece straight here. I don't know which one that is, so let's see. There we go. Okay, so I'm just looking here and then looking there to see where that corresponds. Okay, so I'm going to shift double click, and sometimes it doesn't work, so you're gonna have to click, shift double click, what to say always, shift double click. I swear it's not working. There we go. Okay, and in our case, I'm just gonna grab these edges here. That's a bit uncomfortable actually, so what you want to do is rotate it first, right, and then work with it. There we go. Okay, just like that. So we go back to UV, click, shift double click, there we go, shift double click, and we'll get these edges here. Then we'll go on over to straighten, and then straighten shell. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to shift, click and drag to select the opposites, and then unfold along U and unfold along V, just to relax that. Now again, if we press 7, you notice that there will be a little bit of stretching here, but it's actually not too bad. It's not too bad at all. So this side is pretty good. So now we laid it out like that. Again, straightening that out. And you might say, what about these pieces here? Can we straighten this? We definitely can, but obviously, so let's do that quickly just to show you. Because we're straightening so much of it, and this isn't really a straight piece, what's going to happen is it is going to stretch quite a bit there, right? So if I go press 7, right, there's quite a bit of stretching here, and I don't want this much because this is the front of the shoe, right? People are going to be paying attention to this side. So you have to decide, do I want that? Okay, in this case, it's fine for this piece here. Okay, but 7 again. But you know, it depends on what you want and how far you're willing to kind of stretch it and move it. So again, you know, it's up to you. It's up to kind of what you're dealing with and how you're going about doing that, so on and so forth. Right. So here we have this piece as well. We can definitely straighten the bottom here, and then it's actually quite long, right? So yeah, okay, not too bad. So I was gonna say we could maybe split it down the middle here. That's also something you might want to consider doing, right? Splitting the UVs even further just to make sure that they unwrap properly. Also that you have more space. We'll do that in a second if we need to. So I'm gonna bring this one down here. And I know that this one here needs to be straight because this one here is quite wavy, so I wouldn't straighten that out. So let's see where that is actually. All right, so I think this is upside down, so I'll do that. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So I'll double click on that. That'll select everything. All right, move that, and then click, shift double click. I'm gonna press Q to get out of that, and there we go. Whoops, not like that. Shift click, shift double click. There we go. We'll get these edges here. Okay, yep. And then straighten, and then straighten sharp. All right. Again, if we press 7, it's actually not bad. There's not too much stretching. There's a lot of stretching with this one, so I might have to undo that, but that's okay. So yeah, we're looking pretty good. Now again, you know, do you want to straighten the shell completely? You know, but I don't think I need to. I think it's fine. Again, it's up to you. If you straighten this, it'll be easier to texture, but there'll be a little bit more stretching, right? Which you probably don't want. Okay, So again, it's totally up to you and what you want. So let's try it out, see what happens. Okay, so straighten shell. Whoops. I think there we go, straighten UVs. Alright, I'm gonna have to move this because sometimes that will mess with that. And what I will have to do here actually is select these ones. Okay, and that, and let's see if I straighten the shell. Let's try all of them and see what happens. Like that. Yeah, we're kind of messing with it too much there. So if I go here, this is the top piece. If I just pull that, oh, there we go. Yeah, so just a quick fill in here from me. In the future, what I'm doing here, so this is everything laid out. We'll get to this, don't worry. But what I wanted to show as well here is that if we click on this, all right, and then go on over here and we straighten this. So actually, let's select this whole thing, all right? So double click on that. And then if we go to straighten and then straighten UVs, if we do that and then press 7, obviously there's going to be a little bit of stretching, and actually that's not too bad here. But if there was quite a bit of stretching, what we could do is, let me just move this really quickly. What we could do is select this, all right, and then shift select that, and then shift select those guys. That will be the inverse of that. We could just do unfold along U and then unfold along V, just to kind of help out there. And if I just redo that, we could also just optimize that sometimes as well, and that might help out. Okay, so if we just optimize this will just basically re-straighten that out. But if we just optimize those areas there, all right, that will also help out. So you could do that and that will also be fine. So just depending on what you want. So if we go ahead with this area here, all right, there was quite a bit of stretching. So again, what we could do is, now you don't have to, I'm just saying you could. Let's do this area here actually. I don't think there'd be too much yet. Okay, so let's do from here. Let's see what we get. I think this area here actually, yeah. So that one, let's go to straighten and straighten those UVs there. Okay, and a little bit of stretching here, but not too bad. All right, and I'm just gonna maybe move these a little bit, and then I'll take these guys in the middle. Okay, and then just go to optimize, and that would be just another way of trying to, you know, sort that out. And here as well. So if you wanted to like make everything straight, that's the point of this little piece that I'm trying to show here. Okay, we could do that. We could do straighten shell. Sorry, not straighten shell. Of course, that's gonna mess up. So from here to here. Okay, we could do straighten, right? And then we could select these guys. Okay, and those guys, and then just go to optimize. And then as you can see, right, it kind of sorts it out just a little bit more, and it's not too bad at all actually, right? I wouldn't keep it like that because it is kind of bothering me. Okay, so I'd probably do this and then just optimize these guys here. So it's just a little bit less stretching. And yeah, I think that did help out a little bit. Just a little bit, okay. So yeah, that was just a quick note there. So you can straighten things and then go in the middle and then just optimize that, or just unfold along U and B. But optimize is basically the same thing. And that they will help out. And again, you can go in and you can lay these out in a way that's just a little bit, you know, you can optimize the texture space and use a little bit more if you need to. So don't forget about that, just doing that. Again, we don't need these to be exactly straight, but if you needed to, you could just straighten both of those edges there. All right, select the inside and then optimize that. So, and let's right click and drag to optimize. So that's not too bad, right? Again, now we've got a straight piece, it looks great, but we have quite a bit of stretching here, right? It's not too bad, but again, what do you want? And if I go to my references here, so for these ones, if we look at what we're doing here, this is actually a plain material. There's not really much going on here. So we could say, yeah, sure, why not? Here there's quite a bit of like leather look on the front here, so we might not want to do that. And the one we're replicating is this one here. So yeah, the stretching, it, you know, again, it depends what you want, what you're going for, and so on and so forth. So this would be great to lay out and texture, but there's a bit of stretching. So you're gonna have to, you know, figure out, okay, what do I want? How do I want to go about doing that? And all of this like straightening and whatever, every program, 3D program kind of has this. So just look out for that on your program there, right? So now we're going to do this side. Okay, that's a bit distracting actually. So I'm going to rotate this with E. Okay, W to bring that down here. Okay, that's the bottom there, yep, and that's the one I want to straighten. So basically the ones that actually look straight are the ones you want to straighten. Okay, and then we go to straighten shell, yes, and then we just want to select the opposite of that. And then just unfold along U and B, all right. Okay, and then this piece is over here, so that's not too bad. We can actually straighten this completely, actually, now that I look at it. So I'm going to show you that one. So let's do from here to here to here. That didn't work. From here to here. There we go. And then from there to there. There we go. So we can go to straighten and straighten UVs. Sorry, straighten shell. There we go. And then let's see if we straighten UVs. This might not work. Oh, there we go. Okay. Not too bad. And then you can come in here and either manually adjust this or there's ways of doing that. But that's honestly, that's good enough. So we will leave it like that. And then we'll press 7 just to see how bad the stretching is. And it really shouldn't be because it is quite a straight piece anyway. So yeah, that is definitely good enough. And now what we can do is we press 7. Okay, go to UV shell. Take all of these guys and see now when we lay them out, if I just do this, and how you lay them out also makes, so maybe you want to put this at the bottom because it's at the bottom and put this on the top because it's on the top, right? That would make sense for people that are texturing this, right? And trying to make sense of what you're doing, right? So there's also that, how do you lay it out? Maybe you put everything at the front of the shoe on this side and everything at the bottom of the shoe on this side, you know, stuff like that. So that's also something that you have to worry about, all right? And face, I'm just making sure all of this kind of makes sense here. Yeah, that's fine. And while we are busy talking about layouts, here is one of a Final Fantasy character, all right, and specifically Cloud. So this is of the upper body, so it's not including the face or the hair or any of the lower body parts. So it's just that, and I found this on the internet, and as you can see, have a look at the way things are laid out here. Things are, so for example, even the hands or the gloves in this case, those pieces are straightened out, as you can see here. Okay, because it's a glove, right? You can straighten these out for like the stitching. Okay, you can see this belt piece over here, for example. Now these are triangulated. This is what happens when you take it into a game. So don't mind the triangles, but this belt piece as well, you can see they're trying to keep it as straight as possible. So like down there, for example. And here they couldn't straighten it out as much because at the end of the day, you know, they're trying to keep the shapes there. So as you can see, but the things that they could straighten out, like all these accessories here. So as you can see, the accessories on one side, the gloves are here, the belt is here. I think this is his arm, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, this I think is his clothing. All right, so again, it's just the top half here. So all of this, so from this, so these belts and buckles and whatever, they can be straightened out. So that is probably, you know, all of this stuff here, and you can see just how it's laid out. Okay, and then all of them, right, they're not touching the edges and they're not touching each other. So a very, very organized way of doing this, very optimized way. Okay, obviously this is for a game, for a AAA company, so they will be very organized and optimized in the way they do things. So here as well, they didn't straighten that out, but anything they can straighten out, they will. So, you know, stuff like this is definitely the belt, right? Here's that bigger belt, these smaller belts over here. So anything they can straighten out, so like this, for example, because that's pointy like that, it has to be that way, so it's left that way. And again, this is just here, so it's better for texturing and then just laying it out and, you know, understanding it when you're in the texturing phase and baking as well. So as you can see, very, very organized, and compared to ours, you know, we're trying to do our best here. So, right, this isn't too bad. But again, you know, we can keep it wobbly if we want to, wavy, just to leave that there, or we can straighten it out and see what we need. So it just depends on what you want, what you're trying to do, so on and so forth. So yeah, okay. So like that, so you see we have a little bit more space to work with now, right? We have a lot more than what we had. So what we can do because of that is we can take all of these, right, and manually scale them up. Whoops. And manually scale them up. Okay, so R to scale, and I'm going to scale this to maybe that much. Press W again to move this. And there we go. So this might be a bit of a problem, and I can see it's probably going to be. We'll sort that out in a second. One thing I do want to show you guys is the transform. So what we have here is, now what you can do as well, if I put this back on, you'll notice that these squares are roughly the same, and you always pretty much want this. These ones are going to be a little bit bigger. Why? Because we manually made them smaller, so that makes sense. Okay, so we don't worry about that. But the ones we want to kind of, flow from one edge to the next. So for example, these pieces here, that one and that one, right? They need to have squares that are similar in size. Why? Because if this one is too big, when we texture it, right, this is going to look really crisp, and then all of a sudden when you come here, it's going to be kind of blurry, right? Because we made this bigger, so it's taking up more texture space, and we made this one smaller, now it's taking up less texture space, and that there's going to be a bit of a problem. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, we will cover that as we go, right? So I'm going to move this one right over there. Actually, before I do that, let's sort this out. So again, they can't be touching or overlapping, and they can't be touching or overlapping there. So there we go there. Yeah, okay, so we managed to put that in. Oh yeah, so I was talking about this. The textile density, all right? We can get however much that is, right? And make sure all of these are the same by clicking on these and say set, all right? And those were actually off. Didn't expect that. So now all of these, right, should be roughly the same number. And I do that, just to make sure that they're all roughly the same. So now these squares are pretty much the same size, okay? And that is exactly what we want. So I'm just gonna move them again. So again, as you can see, we straightened everything out, and it just enabled us to make these a little bit bigger, right? And now we have more space to work with, right? So we were able to squeeze the most technically that we possibly could. If we wanted to, we could do this and then go to layout UVs. And I don't actually talk about this. So what the heck is this? This is just an automatic way of laying these out in the best possible way. And Maya will do that automatically. How do we know that? Because, so one, we're selecting the resolution. What are you going to bake this at? Yeah, I want it to be at 4K. Okay, cool. How many iterations do you want? 3. Okay, just to pack together, non-overlapping, yes. Okay, do not overlap. All right, shell, pre-rotation. We can put this on, but we don't really need that. And then translate shells, rotate shells, yes. So basically saying you can do all of this stuff. You can rotate it, right? The texture map size, shell padding. What the heck does that mean? So shell padding means between these two tiles, you can't be less than 32 pixels, all right? Why is it 32 pixels? Because it's 4K. If this was 2K, we could have made it 16 pixels. If it was 1K, we could have made it 8 pixels, so on and so forth. You get the idea there. So the bigger this number, the resolution you're baking at, the bigger the pixels padding needs to be. The tile padding is how close is this to the edge of the tile. If we put this at 0, it will be literally on the edge, which you don't want, okay? Shell distribution, yeah, sure. Tiles 1 by 1, yes. Full square, yes. So on and so forth. Scale mode, right? We basically want it to be the same scale. So we'll select all of these, not that one because we want it to be scaled, right? And then say apply. That's going to take a second, right? Just to kind of work out what's the best way to do this. And we know the number is 12.8, so let's see if it's scaled that up. Let's see, get. So it actually scaled it down a little bit. Okay, and yeah, it will kind of change it a little bit there. So our packing was actually better than Maya. I usually like that, right? It did do a better job. Like here, there's a lot of wasted space, obviously, right? A lot of wasted space, but we only have one shoe, so there's only so much you can pack together, right? So I'm gonna leave it the way we had it there, and I'm gonna bring these guys in here as well. And yeah, there we go. And you can kind of put these, I don't want to say wherever, but again, we know that these are like the bigger parts of the shoe, so like that and that, and then all of these here. So these two are kind of together, so we know, oh yeah, that'll flow together. And then we've got this piece here, which doesn't make sense there, and this one. So I'll maybe move this one up, for example, right? Just so it makes sense in terms of like how it should flow. So we've got the top, the middle pieces, and then the bottom pieces, right? So that kind of makes sense that way. Let's go to the smoothing. So up next, let's switch this off and go to object mode and Alt-Shift-D, because we've been doing quite a bit there. So now you notice this whole thing is smoothed out, right? There's no hard edges or anything of that sort, okay? It's just all one piece. So what we can do is we can go on over to, or what you want to do is go on over to edge, right? And then say select texture borders, right? So this is going to select the borders of all of this stuff here, all right? And we could leave it the way it is, right? So what I'm talking about is if we go into object mode, okay, and then I go to soften, harden edges and soften this, everything is now soft, right? And that would still work, we would be fine. I mean, not the biggest deal here. There aren't too many hard edges really, technically. Maybe here a little bit, but yeah, I mean, we could get away with this, right? So just to aid us in baking, what we will do is go on over to edge, okay, say under select by type, right, UV toolkit, texture borders, right? And then what I do want to do first is mesh display, unlock the normals, okay? And then I want to say shift, right click and drag, and harden these edges here. Okay, and then object mode, mesh display, unlock those normals, and okay, there we go, so that did work, right? Now you'll notice that we've got these seams here that are now hard edges, which looks a little bit distracting. And what I do want to do actually is go back here and say mesh display and lock those normals. Okay. And yeah, so now this will just aid us in our baking. Again, that looks a little bit distracting there because we have hard edges where the seams are, but that just helps us out in terms of baking. Now again, do you always need a seam for, do you always need a hard edge for these seams? No, you don't. You only need it for edges that are going to be hard edges that you know for sure. So if you're building hard surface stuff, so like a mech or something, yeah, you're definitely going to need seams and hard edges for where your seams are. But for this case, like I said, you could just keep it soft and then kind of do this, or again, it's kind of up to you. So don't worry too much about that. This looks a little bit odd here, so I think maybe we will just leave it soft because this is kind of like this sort of faceting here that's kind of bothering me. It looks a bit odd, to say the least, right? So maybe let's just go to soften our edge, soften those edges. We first want to unlock the normals, okay, and then soften, harden edge, soften the edges. Let's try that one more time, see if it works. Edge, okay, texture borders, harden the edge, okay, yep, and then going over to object mode like a person, okay, maybe we'll lock, I think locking the normals might be kicking me, yeah, okay, that's what it is, okay, so we'll just leave the normals the way it is, yeah, okay, so don't lock your normals again. So yeah, we're pretty much done with laying everything out, UVing, unwrapping, okay, we just need to get to baking and texturing. So baking and texturing will be next, and so yeah, baking and texturing will be next. So just one more quick check, just make sure under UV shell none of these are overlapping each other or these edges here, right, the borders. And you know, we don't have much going on here, so yeah, we're good to go. So we tried to lay this out in a way that kind of makes sense, right? We've got the top pieces here, right? We've got these ones here, and these ones are just the stragglers on the inside, so we don't have to worry too much about that. You can maybe move them off center here if you want to, but I think there is fine. I'll just leave it. So I'm going to save that, and yeah, I think we are good to go for the baking. Right, so I got caught up in a bunch of things there, but one of the things I forgot to do here was show you guys how to optimize this. So optimization is really just a way of making sure that you have the correct number of polygons and for whatever it is you're doing, right? So in our case, we don't need to optimize anything because we're not putting this in the game engine. We don't have a director telling us we need so many polygons, right? So on and so forth. But if you did, right, this is some of the steps you would take. So firstly, you would kind of have a look at, okay, how many polygons do I actually have? So I'll go to face, right, double click on that. Okay, so I've got 1,000 faces, right, 1,050 to be pretty much, not exact, but you know, within a few polygons there. We've got so many triangles, right, so on and so forth. So this is very useful to see that information. So if your budget is, let's say, 2,000 triangles or 1,000 faces or 500 faces, you're going to have to make some changes here, all right? So in order to do that, so now let's just say we know, okay, we want it to be under 1,000 faces, for example. So one big area, again, we wouldn't actually have any of these guys here, right? Realistically, we wouldn't have these dudes. So, but since we can't delete that, since we are going to use that, we have to come over here, for example. So this is probably a good place to start. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we don't want too many triangles, but again, we're not going to animate this. So we know we can put kind of as many triangles as we want, really. So I'm going to press Ctrl+1 to get out of solo mode. I'm going to go into object mode, and let's go back here and make that a live object and click on this dude and Ctrl+Shift+Q. And we want to go back to custom default. By the way, yours is probably just default, I think. I don't know what it'll be called by default, but yeah. Okay, so I just want to merge some of these. So this one here is definitely one that can be merged. So I am just going to do this, right? And that. Again, you don't want them right on the edges here, so no triangles, like pretty much on the edge. Okay, so you get the point, right? So that's really what you want to do. And here as well, I think I would probably, push this. So I don't think, there's a need for this loop. In fact, I just control shift, because I loop all around, and just click that out there. So that way, that'll just be one piece, okay? And then I'll just move this up here. And let's just see if I can do this. And it's probably not going to work out too well, so I will have to manually. Or you can just smooth this, right? And this will probably smooth as well. There we go. Okay, and possibly these edges here as well. So I'll just delete those ones instead, all right? And we'll smooth that out. But anyway, you get the point of optimization now, right? So you might also do one of these ones here as well. So let's maybe do this one together. Okay, there we go. So we're gonna go back into object mode, Control Shift Q, all right, and click on this one, Alt Shift D, and I want to go to vertex mode, all right, and then Control Shift A to select everything, and then I want to Shift right click and drag, and I don't have my thing out here, but that's okay. I've been explaining it this whole time. So Shift right click and drag, merge vertices, merge. Okay, we can go to apply, and that's all fine there. So then we want to go back into object mode, and then we want to go to mesh, clean up, click on that. Whoops, mesh, clean up, click on that. Apply, click on that first, apply. Yeah, so that's all fine. Again, if it has something selected, you'll see it here. Okay, so that's good. And the last step would be to check your actual UVs, right? Because we changed that, so you have to go back into UV editing. And so for this, we'll go to UV shell, click on this, shift, right click and drag, and click on optimize. And you'll notice that it did change a little bit there, right? And then the same thing here, so press G to optimize that. And here I will get this and make sure to set these just in case. So I think the size was fine there. And here, let's go to optimize as well for these ones, because I did change that. Okay, and this one, I don't think I changed this one, right? Those loops, I do need those though, because that is kind of... one thing I will do is go back into object mode, Control Shift Q, just move these, because I feel like those are kind of not too well spread out, right? Just kind of oddly spaced, that's all. Okay, back into object mode here, Control Shift Q, sorry. Okay, and then back here with UV shell, and we want to optimize that. So basically any piece that you changed, all right? So just to check that, we can press 7 on here. And yeah, I mean, they're all pretty good. Again, these areas here are the ones that we did change. So like this, what I will do is I'll go to vertices, all right, get out of that mode. Okay, select these ones and then shift select these ones. Okay, and then I will say optimize, there we go. That would probably be better. All right, and then same thing with these ones here, just in case. All right. And yeah, I think we are good. Again, you could add more areas, minus more areas here, but if you go to face, double click on this, we now have less than 1,000, right? So that's pretty good there. So again, if you are animating this, maybe you want to have a look at, where you are animating. So probably this area here would be animated. This here, you wouldn't really move or flex too much, but even if it did, you wouldn't have anything crazy going on there anyway. So yeah, we are pretty much done. So we're done optimizing this. Not the best optimization, by the way, but good enough. And yeah, I think we are good to go. Again, check for any 5-sided polygons, but we did check for that. So yeah, up next is baking and texturing. And I don't really think we have anything else to do here, but if I have to add anything, I will, so don't worry about that. And we are now finally at the end of the retopology and unwrapping phase. Now I realize that was a lot to go through, and now you can see why people want AI to be doing all of this unwrapping and UVing, because it's quite a bit. Now just a quick recap, and I promise this will be very quick, so don't worry too much about it, because there's a lot of information there, so I do think we just need to kind of go over a few things, and yeah, well, let's go through that. So number one, retopology is a relatively easy but long process that requires knowledge of the flow and placement of proper topology and edges. Now this will come with time as you go. Number two, triangles are not your enemy and can be used throughout the retopology process, even when you are going to animate the model. So try to avoid placing the triangles on edges, as this will stop your loops, but again, that depends on the goal of the mesh and what you're trying to do. And if you wanted to, what you could do was actually make your mesh from entirely decimated topology, but we remesh just to organize and optimize things. So that's really the only difference there. So number three, the polygon count can be important, and how many you use, how many polygons, will depend on the game type, your polygon budget, and detail levels you want to achieve. Even on modern games like Monster Hunter Wilds, you will see the faceted polygons because they also have a certain number of polygons to use per character, so don't freak out when you have to use too few. Number four, because of the polygon limits, you will need to optimize the mesh for whatever reasons you are using to create the mesh. Is it for animation? Do you need less than 100,000 triangles? Are you using the mesh to create a quick render, etc.? Number five, you need to unwrap and flatten the mesh so that we can texture and bake the details later. That's the whole idea behind this, so for better texturing and baking. Number six, the stretching and squishing of the shells are inevitable, so be careful with how much you are willing to give and take over here. So for example, the shells that will be right in front of the viewer where we can all see it for a render, you'll probably want less stretching and squishing, but if the shells can't really be seen, then no one will notice the stretching if there is any, so you don't have to worry about that. Same thing with the scaling. Number seven, texture space is like gold to texture artists, so make sure to try and squeeze every bit of space as you possibly can without distorting, overlapping, or randomly scaling the UV shells too much. You can do all of these things, but within reason. Number 8, keeping less seams aren't as important as before, as we can now texture models in 3D. But as a general rule, if you need less stretching and more texture space, splitting up your UVs can help to alleviate both of these problems. Number 9, we aren't doing any hard surface stuff, so we won't need hard edge seams for our meshes, but as another general rule, remember that all of your hard edges are always UV seams, but not all of your UV seams need to be hard edges. Making these edges harder in some cases will help with your baking, especially with hard surface modeling, but in our case, we could have just softened everything and called it a day. We would have still been fine. And yeah, that is now really it. That's the end of the video. So like it if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comments section. And if you want to see how I actually model this, go to the previous video, which of course I modeled in ZBrush and then came here to retopologize that. But yeah, that is it. You can check out my paid tutorials as well. I have other free tutorials on YouTube. And that is now finally the end of the video. Thanks for watching, thanks for keeping with it, and I'll see you in the next one for baking and texturing.